January 15th, 1989. The summit in Houston, Texas. 19,000 fans have packed the arena to witness the second annual Royal Rumble. But this time, things are different. This time, the Royal Rumble is on pay-per-view. This time, the match features 30 men instead of 20. This time, the stakes feel real. The World Wrestling Federation is positioning the Rumble as one of its flagship events, right alongside WrestleMania, SummerSlam, and Survivor Series. And look, the 1989 Royal Rumble deserves credit for establishing the template that would define this event for decades. The 30-man format, the 2-minute intervals, the countdown clock. All of that starts here. But here is the thing about templates. First drafts are messy, and the 1989 Royal Rumble is absolutely a first draft. Beneath the historical significance of this event lies a pay-per-view riddled with bizarre booking decisions, lifeless stretches, commentary blunders, a main event that dies a slow death in its final third, and a winner so baffling that even hardcore fans in 1989 were scratching their heads. This is everything wrong with Royal Rumble, 1989. Number 1. The undercard is brutally thin. Before we even get to the Rumble match, we need to talk about what the World Wrestling Federation decided was worth your money on this pay-per-view. Because the answer is not much. The entire televised card consists of a 2 out of 3 falls 6-man tag, a women's championship match, a pose-down segment, a King of the Ring crown match, and then the Rumble. That is 3 actual wrestling matches supporting the main event, and one of them is a segment where 2 guys flex at each other in their underwear for nearly 15 minutes. Nearly 15 minutes. On a pay-per-view. 2 grown men oiling up and posing while Bobby Heenan and Jesse Ventura try to convince you this is compelling television. The Ultimate Warrior and ravishing Rick Rude, standing in the ring flexing their biceps in round after round of competitive posing, while the crowd cheers for Warrior in every single round because of course they do. And then Rude attacks Warrior with a metal bar to set up their WrestleMania feud. Here is the problem. Warrior and Rude were 2 of the most athletic performers on the roster. They were both left out of the Rumble match entirely to do this segment. You have a 30-man Royal Rumble, and you cannot find room for the Intercontinental Champion or one of your hottest heels? Instead of showcasing them in the most exciting match concept in wrestling, you have them greased up and flexing for nearly 15 minutes? The Bushwhackers got Rumble spots over the Intercontinental Champion. Let that one marinate. Number 2. The Women's Championship match exists. Rockin' Robin defended the WWE Women's Championship against Judy Martin, and the match was exactly as forgettable as that sentence made it sound. No build, no heat, no story. The crowd sat on their hands for most of it, and the match quality was below house show standards. Robin's offense consisted mostly of crossbodies, and the finish came and went without the crowd even realizing the match was over. This was the state of women's wrestling in the World Wrestling Federation in 1989. The Women's Championship had so little prestige that the match was clipped significantly on the Coliseum video release, treated as an afterthought even by the WWE's own home video department. Interestingly, the Haku vs. Harley Race match was the one completely edited off the VHS release, but the women's match barely fared better, reduced to background noise on a card that already felt thin. Number 3. Haku vs. Harley Race was decent, but meaningless. King Haku defended his King of the Ring crown against the man he originally won it from, Harley Race. And credit where credit is due, Race worked his tail off in this match. Pile drivers, suplexes, neck breakers, the whole deal. It was probably the best undercard match on the show. But here is the issue. Nobody cared about the King of the Ring gimmick. The crown, the robe, the cape, none of it meant anything in terms of actual championship contention or storyline significance. Haku won with a thrust kick, and then what? He continued being King Haku for a while, and nothing of consequence ever came from it. This was a match that existed to fill time on a card that desperately needed filling. Number 4. The 6-man tag was fun but exposed every problem with the roster. Jim Duggan and the Hart Foundation against Dino Bravo and the Fabulous Rougeaus in a 2 out of 3 falls match opened the show, and it was genuinely entertaining. Bret Hart carried the match from a work rate perspective because of course he did. The Rougeaus were smooth and underrated as a tag team. The crowd was hot. But Jesse Ventura immediately pointed out the obvious problem that the announce team tried to ignore. The fans were chanting USA for a match featuring 5 Canadians and 1 American. Dugan was the only American in the ring, and he was standing on the apron for most of the match. The crowd did not care. They chanted USA anyway, and Gorilla Monsoon tried to cover for it by saying the chants were for Duggan, even though Duggan was not the legal man. This was the WWE audience in 1989. Bless their hearts. Number 5. Demolition starting at numbers 1 and 2 was a great idea with terrible execution. Axe drew number 1. Smash drew number 2. The WWE Tag Team Champions were going to have to fight each other. This is genuinely a cool concept. Tag team partners forced into combat. The tension of every man for himself breaking down their partnership. Except according to both Bill Eadie and Barry Darsow, neither of them knew they would be fighting each other until Demolition's theme music played for the second time. Vince McMahon and Pat Patterson deliberately kept the entry numbers from them to get a genuine surprised reaction, which sounds great in theory, but meant that the actual tag team champions had to improvise 2 full minutes of action against each other with 0 preparation. The result was 2 minutes of basic punching and kicking that looked exactly like what it was. 2 guys making it up as they went along. Eadie himself said he was relieved when André came out at number 3 so they could stop pretending to fight each other. Number 6. André the Giant is physically broken. André entered at number 3 and immediately became the focal point of the match. Which makes sense. He is the largest human being in the building and one of the most famous wrestlers alive. The problem is that by January 1989, André the Giant could barely move. His acromegaly was destroying his body. His back was fused. His mobility was a fraction of what it had been even 2 years earlier during his legendary feud with Hulk Hogan. And the WWE's solution was to have André stand in one spot, lean against the ropes, and choke people. That was his entire contribution to the first 15 minutes of this Royal Rumble. Stand, choke, lean, repeat. They had multiple men gang up on André at various points, and none of it looked convincing because nobody could realistically move him, and he could not realistically sell anything. Mr. Perfect, Axe, Greg Valentine, and Ronnie Garvin all took turns working on André, and the result was always the same. André standing there, absorbing punishment that would have killed a normal man 3 times over, then casually swatting someone away. Number 7. Jake Roberts got absolutely buried. Jake the Snake Roberts entered at number 7, and what followed was one of the most embarrassing stretches for a top-tier talent in Rumble history. André immediately targeted Jake and spent the next 2 minutes choking him, stepping on him, and generally making him look like a child fighting a grizzly bear. Jake literally did nothing. No offense, no DDT attempt, no signature spots. He entered the ring, got manhandled by André for 2 minutes, and then got thrown out like garbage. Jake Roberts in 1989 was one of the most over babyfaces in the entire company. His feud with André was supposed to be a marquee storyline. And the Rumble showcase for that feud was Jake getting ragdolled for 2 minutes without landing a single offensive maneuver. That is not how you build anticipation for a rivalry. That is how you make your babyface look pathetic. Number 8. André eliminates himself because of a snake. After Jake got tossed from the match, he went to the back, grabbed his bag containing Damien the Python, and returned to ringside. He threw the bag with the snake into the ring, and André, the most fearsome giant in professional wrestling history, the man who went undefeated for 15 years, who bodied Hulk Hogan, who terrified locker rooms with his mere presence, leaped over the top rope and ran away from a snake in a bag. André the Giant eliminated himself from the Royal Rumble because a reptile in a burlap sack was placed near him. Now look, the snake phobia angle was part of the André-Jake feud, and it was established on television. But there is a massive difference between running a storyline on a weekly TV show and having your most legendary attraction look like a complete fool on pay-per-view. André eliminating himself from the Rumble because he was afraid of a snake in a bag killed whatever mystique the man had left. 1 year earlier at Royal Rumble 1988, André was signing a contract for the biggest rematch in wrestling history against Hulk Hogan. 1 year later, he is literally fleeing from a bag. The decline was staggering, and the booking only made it worse. Number 9. The dead zone between André leaving and Hogan entering. After André self-eliminated, the match entered what can only be described as a coma. The ring was left with a collection of mid-carders who, while talented, had absolutely zero crowd investment in the context of a battle royal. Mr. Perfect, Shawn Michaels, Greg Valentine, Ron Bass, Bushwhacker Butch, Honky Tonk Man, Tito Santana, and Bad News Brown. All fine wrestlers in their own right. Some of them, like Perfect and Bad News Brown, were genuinely excellent performers who deserved better. But without a clear star presence anchoring the action, the crowd went noticeably quiet. The eliminations during this stretch were perfunctory and unmemorable. Valentine got tossed by Savage when he eventually entered. Honky Tonk Man got dumped by Tito and Butch in a spot that happened so fast even the cameras almost missed it. Ron Bass was eliminated by the Rockers working together. None of these eliminations told a story. None of them advanced a feud. They were just bodies going over ropes to kill time until Hogan showed up and the match could actually mean something again. This is the fundamental structural problem with early Royal Rumbles that the WWE had not yet figured out. You need star power distributed throughout the match. You cannot have your two biggest draws, André and Hogan, separated by a 15-minute dead zone filled with mid-card filler. Later, Rumbles would learn to stagger their stars evenly across the entry order, giving the audience a reason to stay invested during every phase of the match. The 1989 Rumble had not learned that lesson yet. Number 10. Shawn Michaels skins the cat and nobody cares. Speaking of things that would become iconic, Shawn Michaels performed his first ever skin the cat spot during this Rumble. He went over the top rope, held on, swung his legs up and back into the ring. It was athletically impressive in 1989 when virtually nobody was doing that kind of thing. But the crowd barely reacted. Because in 1989, Shawn Michaels was a tag team wrestler in the Rockers. He was not the Heartbreak Kid. He was not the showstopper. He was the smaller half of a fun tag team. And the Houston crowd had absolutely no reason to lose their minds over him doing a gymnastics move during a battle royal. It is one of those moments that only becomes significant in retrospect, and watching it in real time is almost comically anticlimactic. Number 11. The Hogan Show begins, and the Rumble becomes a one-man exhibition. Hulk Hogan entered at number 18, and the match immediately transformed into the Hulk Hogan Variety Hour. Within minutes of entering, Hogan eliminated Mr. Perfect, dumped Tito Santana, clotheslined both Brainbusters over the top rope simultaneously, tossed Bushwhacker Luke, launched Coco Beware, and demolished the Warlord in what became one of the most famous Rumble moments ever. But here is what people do not talk about enough. Hogan was in this match for roughly 11.5 minutes. In that time, he racked up 10 eliminations. 10. That set a new elimination record that would stand for years, and it turned the entire Royal Rumble into a showcase for one man. Every other wrestler in the ring existed solely to be eliminated by Hulk Hogan. Perfect lasted nearly 28 minutes building an Iron Man performance and was dumped by Hogan within seconds of Hulk entering. Coco Beware lasted about a minute. The Warlord lasted 2 seconds. 2 actual seconds. He entered the ring and was immediately clotheslined back out by Hogan. It held the record for the shortest Royal Rumble appearance for 20 years until Santino Marella broke it in 2009. The problem is not that Hogan was dominant. The problem is that his dominance made everyone else look like absolute cannon fodder. The entire match became about Hulk and nothing else mattered. Number 12. Hogan accidentally eliminates Savage, and the storytelling is clumsy. The biggest storyline of this entire Rumble, the angle that actually mattered for WrestleMania season, was the tension between the mega powers. Hulk Hogan and WWE champion Randy Savage were supposed to be best friends and tag team partners. But cracks were forming. During the match, Hogan accidentally eliminated Savage, and this was supposed to be the catalyst for their WrestleMania V main event. The problem was the execution. The elimination was supposed to look accidental, like Hogan was throwing out a heel, and Savage just happened to be in the way. But it looked awkward. It looked choreographed. The camera angle did not help, and Savage's reaction, while animated, felt like it happened too quickly and too cleanly for what should have been a moment of genuine shock and confusion. More importantly, Gorilla Monsoon and Jesse Ventura did not fully sell the gravity of the moment in real time. They acknowledged the accident but moved on too quickly to the next sequence of eliminations. This should have been the defining moment of the entire pay-per-view. The match should have slowed down to breathe and let the audience feel the weight of what just happened. Instead, it was treated as just another elimination in a series of Hogan eliminations. The post-match interview with Savage and Elizabeth did better work establishing the tension than the actual in-match moment did. Number 13. Bad news. Brown eliminates Hogan in a quietly embarrassing moment. After spending 11 minutes running through the roster like a buzzsaw, Hogan got eliminated by the Twin Towers, Big Boss Man, and Akeem, after they double-teamed him. In a vacuum, this is fine booking. You needed to get Hogan out without beating him clean, and a 2-on-1 elimination is a classic Rumble trope. But the way it played out was messy. Hogan was battling Big Boss Man and Akeem, the Twin Towers, who were his primary feuding opponents heading into WrestleMania season. Bad News Brown, who had been lurking on the periphery for most of his time in the match, had been working Hogan over as well. The moment should have gotten massive heat on the Twin Towers as a dominant threat heading into WrestleMania. Instead, the attention was split between Brown, Bossman, and Akeem, and the crowd did not have a clear target for their anger. Was it Brown's involvement? Bossman's aggression? Akeem's size? The booking muddied the waters at the exact moment it needed clarity. And it raised another question nobody seemed interested in answering. If the plan was always to build toward Hogan versus Savage at WrestleMania V, why was Hogan spending his Rumble time feuding with the Twin Towers instead of creating more tension with his own tag team partner? The entire Rumble should have been building toward the Mega Powers fracture, but Hogan spent more time fighting mid-card heels than he did interacting with the WWE champion standing right next to him. And then Hogan did what Hogan always does. He reached back over the ropes and pulled Bossman out of the ring, eliminating him after Hogan himself was already eliminated. An eliminated wrestler eliminating someone still in the match. Two of the biggest heel threats in the final stretch were eliminated by a guy who was no longer legally in the match. Hogan broke the rules, and Gorilla Monsoon barely even questioned it. Number 14. The entire final third of the match is dead. This is the biggest problem with the 1989 Royal Rumble, and it is not even close. Once Hogan and Savage were both eliminated, the match died. It did not slow down. It did not lose momentum. It died. The ring was left with Akeem, Brutus Beefcake, the Red Rooster, the Barbarian, Big John Studd, Hercules, Rick Martel, and the $1 Million Man. And the crowd went completely silent. Not quiet. Silent. Houston, Texas, a city known for rowdy wrestling crowds going back to Paul Boesch's legendary promotion, sat on their hands and watched a parade of mid-carders punch each other in corners for the final 15 minutes of their pay-per-view main event. The energy that Hogan and André had brought to their respective portions of the match evaporated entirely and never came back. Multiple reviewers over the years have called the final stretch of the 1989 Royal Rumble one of the deadest main event crowds in WWE history for the entire decade. And it is hard to argue with that assessment. Number 15. Big John Studd and Akeem hugged in the corner for an eternity. If you watch the last portion of this Rumble, you will notice that Big John Studd and Akeem spent an absurd amount of time locked together in the corner doing absolutely nothing. They were tied up, leaning on each other, barely moving, for what felt like 10 straight minutes. This was the state of both men physically. Studd had been out of wrestling for 2 years and returned with limited mobility, bad knees, a bad shoulder, and a bad back. Akeem, formerly the one-man gang, was carrying a lot of extra weight and was not exactly known for cardio-intensive performances. The two of them standing in the corner holding each other was the wrestling equivalent of two exhausted boxers clinching in round 12, except neither of them had actually done anything to get exhausted. Number 16. The Red Rooster is in the Final 8. Terry Taylor as the Red Rooster made it to the Final 8 of the 1989 Royal Rumble match. Terry Taylor, a genuinely talented performer who had been a top star in Mid-South Wrestling and the UWF, was saddled with a gimmick where he strutted around like a chicken and had red-dyed hair. and he was in the final 8 of your pay-per-view main event. The fans booed when he entered despite being a babyface. He had turned face on Saturday night's main event just weeks earlier, and the crowd already hated the gimmick so much that they booed him anyway. Taylor spent his entire time in the final stretch getting beaten up by everyone and contributing nothing, before Ted mercifully put him out of his misery. Having the Red Rooster in your final 8 is a damning indictment of the WWE's roster depth behind their top stars. Number 17, the $1 Million Man bought the number 30 spot, and it led to nothing. The storyline was that the $1 Million Man, used his wealth to purchase the number 30 entry from Slick, Akeem's manager. This is a fantastic idea. A heel using his money to buy the best possible spot in the Rumble? That is classic Ted, and it generated real heat in the pre-match promos. Ted was visibly unhappy with his original number, and then visibly thrilled after making the deal. But the payoff was terrible. Ted entered at number 30, eliminated the Red Rooster, Hercules, and Brutus Beefcake, and then got dumped by Big John Studd. The $1 Million Man bought the best number in the match and still lost to a guy who spent 15 minutes hugging Akeem in the corner. Ted was the hottest heel in the company. He was in the middle of the Virgil storyline. He was putting on excellent matches everywhere he went. He was the kind of wrestler who could have benefited enormously from a Royal Rumble victory, even in an era when winning the Rumble did not guarantee a title shot. Instead, the win went to a returning nostalgia act who could barely work. Number 18. The winner is Big John Studd. Let us talk about the elephant in the room. Big John Studd won the 1989 Royal Rumble. The first ever 30-man Royal Rumble, the first Rumble on pay-per-view, the match that established the format we still watch today, was won by Big John Studd. In a match featuring Hulk Hogan, Randy Savage, André the Giant, the $1 Million Man, Mr. Perfect, Jake Roberts, the Brainbusters, Bad News Brown, and a 23-year-old Shawn Michaels, the WWE decided the winner should be a guy who had been retired for 2 years, could barely move in the ring, and was already having house show matches described as terrible by everyone who saw them. Fans at his live events were chanting boring during his matches with Akeem and Haku. Attendance was down at shows headlined by Studd. The writing was on the wall from the very first house show loop, and the WWE either could not see it or chose to ignore it. The supposed logic was a Lifetime Achievement Award. Studd was a big name from the mid-'80s. He had been a main event heel for years, and this was supposed to be the coronation of his babyface comeback. Vince McMahon clearly had nostalgia goggles on. He remembered the Studd who feuded with Andre at the first WrestleMania, the Studd who was part of the Heenan family alongside King Kong Bundy, the Studd who drew money as a top heel. But that Studd was gone. The man standing in the ring in January 1989 was a shell of that performer, weighing close to 400 pounds with knees that could barely support him and a back that was held together by prayers and tape. But here is the truly damning part. The execution proved what everyone backstage already suspected. Studd could not go anymore. His body was breaking down. He won the Rumble in January, served as a guest referee at WrestleMania V in April, and was gone from the company entirely by June. His last match was on June 4, 1989, less than 5 months after his Rumble victory. Hillbilly Jim literally took over his house show bookings. You gave the biggest prize in your second biggest event to a man who would be gone before the summer. The $1 Million Man, Mr. Perfect, Jake Roberts, even Bad News Brown would have been more productive winners. Any one of them could have used the Rumble victory as a springboard for months of storytelling. Studd used it as a springboard to a referee gig and early retirement. Number 19. There were no real stakes for winning. Unlike every Royal Rumble from 1993 onwards, the 1989 Rumble offered the winner absolutely nothing beyond bragging rights. No title shot. No WrestleMania main event slot. No championship match of any kind. You win the 30-man Royal Rumble and your reward is a handshake and the right to say you won. This is why the Studd victory feels even more hollow than it already does. At least when Hacksaw Jim Duggan won the equally meaningless 1988 Rumble, the match only had 20 men and the roster was thin enough to justify it. The 1989 Rumble had 30 men, most of the company's top stars, and it was on pay-per-view. The stakes should have matched the occasion. They did not even come close. Number 20. Gorilla Monsoon misuses the word literally at least twice. Gorilla Monsoon was a fantastic announcer. His chemistry with Jesse Ventura was outstanding, and their commentary added tremendously to WWE pay-per-views throughout this era. But Gorilla had a well-documented habit of butchering the English language in ways that would make an English teacher weep. He described fans as literally hanging from the rafters. Nobody was hanging from the rafters, Gorilla. He described someone as literally being turned inside out by a clothesline. Nobody was turned inside out. His use of literally was consistently and aggressively incorrect, and while it became an endearing part of his commentary over time, it was objectively terrible broadcasting. Number 21. The crowd does not count down the clock. One of the most iconic aspects of the Royal Rumble is the crowd counting down from 10 as the buzzer approaches. That electric 10, 9, 8, 7 countdown that builds anticipation for every single entry. It is part of what makes the Rumble special. In 1989, the crowd does not do it, at least not consistently. There are sporadic attempts at counting along, but nothing close to the unified countdown that would become standard in later years. The tradition had not been established yet, and the production team had not figured out how to encourage it. It makes the entries feel flat compared to what we are accustomed to seeing. Number 22. No entrance music for the Rumble entrance. After Demolition entered to their iconic theme at positions 1 and 2, not a single other Rumble participant got entrance music. They just walked down the aisle to the buzzer. No music. No entrance theatrics. Just a guy in his tights walking toward the ring while Gorilla Monsoon told you his name. For the Hogans and Savages of the world, this barely mattered because they were so over that the crowd reacted to their faces alone. But for the mid-card guys, the lack of entrance music sucked whatever remaining energy the crowd might have had for their arrival. Imagine watching the Barbarian enter the Rumble to absolute silence because there is no theme music, and nobody in Houston, Texas particularly cares about the Barbarian. That is what this felt like for a solid 2/3 of the entries. Number 23. The tag team partner entries are suspiciously convenient. Demolition at 1 and 2. The Brainbusters, Arn Anderson and Tully Blanchard entering at 16 and 17. The Twin Towers, Big Boss Man and Akeem entering at 22 and 23. The Rockers, Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty entering at 9 and 14. The Bushwhackers, Butch and Luke entering at 10 and 19. The Royal Rumble is supposed to be a random draw. You pick a number and that is your number. But somehow 5 different tag teams ended up with their partners entering in close proximity to each other. The odds of that happening randomly are astronomical. Jesse Ventura even commented on air that someone did not shake those numbers up well enough. The booking was showing through the kayfabe in a way that was impossible to ignore, even in 1989. Number 24. Ron Bass's hair situation. Ron Bass entered at number 8, and his appearance immediately raised questions. Bass had lost a hair versus hair match to Brutus Beefcake on Saturday night's main event, meaning he was supposed to be bald. But SNME was taped so far in advance of the Rumble that Bass's hair had already grown back significantly by the time this pay-per-view aired. He was supposed to be a freshly shaved man humiliated by his loss, and instead, he looked like a guy who just needed a trim. The disconnect between television continuity and reality was jarring for anyone paying attention. Number 25. Hogan threw Arn Anderson back into the ring instead of out. During the Hogan stretch of the match, Arn Anderson climbed over the top rope to the ring apron. Hogan grabbed him. He had Anderson on the outside. All Hogan had to do was let go or push, and Anderson would have been eliminated. Instead, Hogan's scoop slammed Anderson from the apron back into the ring. He literally saved Anderson from elimination so he could throw him out his way later. This is the kind of baffling Rumble logic that plagued early editions of the match. Wrestlers routinely ignored easy eliminations because the choreography required a different sequence. It looked ridiculous in real time, and it looks even more ridiculous on replay. Number 26. Hogan cheated twice after his elimination and nobody cared. We touched on this briefly, but it deserves its own entry. Hulk Hogan was eliminated from the Royal Rumble match. He was out. Done. His feet hit the floor. And then he reached back over the ropes, grabbed Big Boss Man, and pulled him out of the ring. That is an eliminated wrestler interfering in the match and directly causing another elimination. It happened again moments later when Brutus Beefcake was trying to eliminate someone with help from Hogan pulling down the ropes from the outside. Hogan was operating as an illegal participant, actively influencing eliminations after his own exit, and the commentary team barely acknowledged it. Gorilla Monsoon, who spent half his career screaming about illegal tactics by heels, had nothing to say about the biggest babyface in the company blatantly cheating. Jesse Ventura, to his credit, tried to call it out, but it was brushed aside. Number 27. The Warlord's 2-second appearance. The Warlord entered at number 21 and was clotheslined out by Hulk Hogan in approximately 2 seconds. It held the record for the shortest Royal Rumble appearance for 20 years until Santino Marella broke it in 2009. The Warlord, one half of the Powers of Pain, a tag team the WWE was actively trying to establish as a serious act, walked into the ring and was immediately launched out as a prop to make Hogan look unstoppable. Whatever momentum the Powers of Pain had as a team was undermined by making one half of the duo look like a complete joke on pay-per-view. The Warlord's Rumble appearance became his most famous moment in the company, but not for any reason the WWE would have wanted. Number 28. The Brainbusters are completely wasted. Arn Anderson and Tully Blanchard, two of the greatest tag team wrestlers in professional wrestling history, fresh from their run as one of the Four Horsemen in the NWA, arrived in the WWE and were given Rumble entries at number 16 and 17. This should have been a showcase. The Brainbusters were arguably the most technically gifted tag team in the world in 1989, and their presence in the Rumble was an opportunity to demonstrate their brilliance to a national pay-per-view audience. Instead, Arn Anderson lasted 10 minutes and did very little of note, besides hitting one spinebuster on Marty Jannetty. Tully Blanchard lasted 8 minutes and was completely invisible for most of it. Both men were eliminated simultaneously by Hogan, with a double clothesline. Two of the greatest workers in professional wrestling were reduced to Hogan fodder. Arn did not even get to hit his signature DDT. It was a criminal waste of talent, even by 1989 standards. Number 29. Rick Martel returned from injury for nothing. Rick Martel made his return at entry number 29 after being out with an injury at the hands of Demolition. His return should have meant something. Instead, he entered the Rumble, lasted about 5.5 minutes, eliminated the Barbarian with a dropkick, and then got caught by Akeem trying a crossbody and thrown over the top rope. No drama, no significant interaction, no story progression, just another body in the final stretch of a match that was already on life support. Number 30. The match ran over an hour with no justification. The 1989 Royal Rumble match clocked in at just over 65 minutes. For context, some of the greatest Rumble matches in history, the 1992 Ric Flair Rumble, the 2001 Austin Rumble, the 2004 Benoit Rumble, ran in the 55 to 60-minute range and felt like they flew by. The 1989 Rumble did not fly by. The last 20 minutes felt like they lasted 40. The match was too long for the star power available, too long for the stories being told, and way too long for a final stretch headlined by Big John Studd versus the $1 Million Man, while Akeem provided background decoration. The match needed to be tighter. Trim 5 to 10 minutes off the end, and the overall product improves dramatically. Number 31. The entire pay-per-view was filler around one storyline. The honest truth about Royal Rumble 1989 is that the entire event existed for one purpose: to advance the Mega Powers breakup storyline. Hogan accidentally eliminating Savage was the moment the entire show was built around. Everything else, the undercard, the pose down, the Rumble winner, all of it was irrelevant window dressing around that singular angle, which is fine for a television special. It worked well enough for the 1988 Royal Rumble on USA Network, where the Rumble was just a vehicle for the Hogan versus André contract signing. But this was pay-per-view now. People were paying money for this show, and the vast majority of that money went toward watching 2.5 minutes of Hogan versus Savage tension and 15 minutes of Big John Studd hugging Akeem. Number 32. The event drew a 1.5 buy rate, which was terrible. Far fewer people watched the 1989 Royal Rumble on pay-per-view than watched the 1988 version for free on USA Network. Which makes sense, free versus paid. But the buy rate itself was notably poor for a WWE pay-per-view in this era. The transition from free television to pay-per-view hurt the event's audience significantly, and the card did not provide enough incentive for casual fans to open their wallets. The WWE was essentially asking people to pay for a show that had one relevant storyline advancement, a mid-card undercard, and a Rumble winner who generated zero excitement. It would take several more years before the Royal Rumble established itself as a must-see pay-per-view event. Number 33. Stud was gone in 5 months. This might be the single most damning critique of the entire event. The Royal Rumble winner, the man who was given the biggest victory on the second biggest show of the year, was out of the WWE by the summer of 1989. Big John Studd won the Rumble in January, served as a guest referee at WrestleMania V in April, and wrestled his last match for the company on June 4th. His house show matches were drawing poorly. Fans were chanting boring during his bouts. His physical limitations were obvious to everyone watching. Reports indicate he got into a disagreement with Vince McMahon over money and simply walked away. The man you chose to validate as your Royal Rumble winner was a nostalgia act whose body had already given out, who could not draw on house shows, and who did not even stick around long enough to see the year out. Contrast that with what they could have done, the $1 Million Man. Rumble victory could have set up months of storytelling. Ted buying the number 30 spot and actually winning would have been the ultimate heel triumph, giving him bragging rights and ammunition for promos for the entire year. Instead, Ted lost to a guy whose claim to fame in 1989 was a bear hug finisher and a history of feuding with André the Giant 4 years earlier. Now look, before anyone jumps in the comments defending this event, I want to be clear about something. The 1989 Royal Rumble is historically important. Undeniably, inarguably important. It is the first 30-man Rumble. The first Rumble on pay-per-view. The event that cemented the Royal Rumble as one of the WWE's Big Four pay-per-views, alongside WrestleMania, SummerSlam, and Survivor Series. The Mega Powers angle that played out during this match led directly to one of the biggest WrestleMania main events in history. Shawn Michaels skinned the cat for the first time here, unknowingly debuting a move that would define his Rumble legacy for the next 20 years. The Warlord's 2-second elimination became legendary, a clip the WWE would replay in hype packages for decades. André eliminating himself because of a snake in a bag is genuinely hilarious and memorable for all the wrong reasons. There are moments in this match that are genuinely iconic. But iconic moments do not make a great show. And Royal Rumble 1989 is not a great show. The Royal Rumble would get better. So much better. The 1990 and 1991 editions would improve the format significantly, learning from the mistakes made here. And then the 1992 Royal Rumble, with the vacant WWE Championship on the line and Ric Flair going wire-to-wire from number 3, would become one of the greatest matches in wrestling history. That match exists because the foundation was laid here in Houston. But foundations are not supposed to be the finished product. They are supposed to be the thing you build on. Royal Rumble. 1989 was the foundation. And like most foundations, it was ugly, unfinished, and full of cracks. Tell us in the comments which sin from this list bothered you the most. Until next time.